Good afternoon, good evening, hello, and welcome to Sojourn with Words. I'm your host, Sista-Joy, and this is, of course, the premier Prince George's County cable television show dedicated exclusively to poetry. And today, well, how about this? Today, CTV is honored to have in studio PoetDannyQueen, and I know he's no stranger to most Prince Georgians because he has actually paved the road for me. For instance, Danny has hosted a poetry-based television program at Bowie State University called Color Me Poetry,
yes.
And he did so for 12 years. So clearly many of you are familiar with his works. Welcome to Sojourn with Words, DannyQueen.
Thank you for inviting me, sister. It's certainly been a sojourn, when I think about it, because, when you think about the arts and when you think about poetry and when you think about, how poetry has developed, the years, how it seems to come into different resurgence and then, it dies down. It's a beautiful thing, the art form, when you think about it.
Well, that's just it. Poetry has been around since the beginning of time.
Yes.
And certainly you are quite prolific in what you do. You have such a wide variety of subject matter. And even beyond the subject matter, there's one thing that you are renowned for, and that is your broadsides.
Oh, yes.
Yes. I mean, you market very fervently. You're known for your marketing. You can go from 7-Eleven to Barnes & Noble and you find DannyQueen. Tell us about that. What made you choose that as your moniker?
Well, it kind of chose me in the sense that I used to always say, I used to go to readings and where people would read poetry, and nobody ever had anything to sell in those days, So I used to always say, nope, I ain't going to be a poet for nobody. So I always find the way to market what I'm doing, because I used to write to major publishers as a teenager in New York. Well, first, let me start here. I used to go, as a teenager, I used to go door to door. And when I lived in Bowie, when I lived in Laurel, as a teenager, I used to go door to door selling poetry. Back then, people weren't like they are now, in the sense that people were very encouraging. That, come on, you're a young man, you're trying to do something with your life. Come on in. And, and they would help me. They would buy stuff from me. So I would go around every day, every Saturday. And sell poetry, knock on people's door, and people say, "You selling what?" They peep out the door.
Right.
I'm a young man. I'm selling poetry. I'm a kid. I'm a teenager. They said, "Oh, okay." And people would open up the doors for the most part, and they would invite you in. And I'd come and I had all these poems in my head, and I would recite them right off the top of my head, and they were impressed, and they would buy stuff from me. Right. And I would come back. When I come back home, my dad would drop me off sometime. I'd have a pocket full of money. So the kids who I went to school with a lot of times, they would make fun of me and say, "Ain't nobody buying that mess." But I never listened to people saying negative stuff.
Right.
I would write to major publishers like in New York. I want you, to take a look at my poetry. I'm interested in being published. And then they would always turn me down. But I never let that stop me. So I came to the entrepreneur thing because I had to.
Okay. So the marketing has worked well for you. We see your work everywhere. I've bought coffee at 7-Eleven. There's DannyQueen's poetry right there on the rack. I've been in Barnes & Noble, and I understand that you're there even. So congratulations. We're very happy that one of Prince George's own poets is continuing to make sure that poetry is available to the masses, regardless of the social strata. The poetry is available to everyone.
And I always try to write in such a way that always current.
Okay, so
I always try to,
of the day.
Yes, whatever the issue of the day is, whether it's politics or whether it's a tribute to someone or whatever it is, I always try to be up on it. And I've always been the kind of writer that I think the importance of reading. So I go through sometimes 8 to 10 newspapers a day, because people say, well, how you write about all this stuff? I try to stay current on what's happening.
And I think that is so important for any writer, but especially for a poet, because our genre is such that you've got to hit it and make it, right away. You don't have a novel length of pages to be able to present your point. And certainly, I understand, Danny, that you have been recognized through awards and recognitions throughout, and some here in the county. But tell us about perhaps a couple of the awards that are most meaningful to you, and then tell us why.
Well, I first have to say the award that I received from Bowie State University some years ago, because I was a student at Bowie. Well, let me start here. I had a mentor when I was a teenager, and I used to live in Bowie near the racetrack, not far from from the school, and I would go down there all the time. And I used to have nothing elaborate like I would have now. Little poems that I typed up on a typewriter during that time. So I know I'm dating myself, right? But at the same time, I'd have it in little colored paper, and I'd go to the drugstore and I'd get little frames and stuff. And I would go down to the campus as a kid, and I would sell those. So I met this lady who became my mentor. She would give me books and encyclopedias and periodicals and stuff to read all the time. And she always took a liking to me, and her name was Dr. Smith. We always called her D. Smith. So she convinced me to go to Bowie State University. And after going to Bowie, I was an English major. And so I tied all of that in together with the writing. But as my mentor, she was always the person that was there for me. Used to bring me to a house and have me running errands and cutting grass and cleaning out the attic and all. As a child, as a teenager. Right. And taught me the English language basically at her knee with her red pencil, as they used to do back in the day.
Okay.
And so that's how I learned. I learned how to write by writing. And I guess I say that to say that I've come a long ways, even as a young person, starting writing when I was like 7, 8 years old.
Right. Well, I think that's the thing that we certainly want to make sure that our young people today, and a lot of times people who may be viewing Sojourn with Words may not feel that it's relevant for the children, but I differ, because there is a message that is for clearly some of the poetry that you'll be sharing today and some that you've already shared. It's for all ages. Yes. And the I Am Special poem, which I just love it. It's absolutely beautiful. It's for young people, but it's relevant for all ages. And that's the thing, that poetry should address the issues of the day. There are some that believe that politics and poetry should never meet.
I mix it all up.
I was going to say, I'm not of that camp. It's hard to be a native Washingtonian like I am and not believe that poetry and politics are supposed to be together. Oh, yeah. But certainly we here in the metropolitan area, whether it's specifically in Prince George's County or in the metro area at large, we are so influenced every day by politics, and it's a part of life for us.
Yes.
So poetry should reflect life. And